Good evening. This is Guitars and Music. I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. I've got 201 subscribers, so I'm trying just to kind of build a base. I talk about music and guitars. Talk about some of my favorite albums and play guitar, and sometimes I review gear. But I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about Steve Lukather's comments that were in the media today about tablature. I know most of you, if you play guitar, are familiar with tablature, and how tablature was not for real guitar players. I think he compared it to playing Guitar Hero, or some of those video game guitars. And I thought that was kind of an interesting quote, and I kind of wanted to say a little bit about it because I used to I never cut it down in a negative way, but I never had much use for it, and I did used to say I didn't really see the point of it. I was raised playing a lot of piano, so I could read music quite well, and then I was in band and choir, so and to this day I read music, pretty well, traditional orchestra piano music, with the treble clef and a bass clef, and I never really had much use for tab. I do think when I started playing guitar in around the junior high age, and because I already played piano pretty well, I was able to, pick up a lot of things I understood, when someone said a G chord or something, I understood all that, so I could kind of start playing. And I do think I used to use piano vocal guitar in those days. I'd get like a John Denver songbook, and it would help me learn the chords. Then, of course, as time went by, I developed a better ear. And now I don't really use music that much. But I used to kind of like the old piano vocal guitar. And every song that used to be released back in those days, it was really part of the distribution of the song. They'd have the 45, it would be RPM, and then it would be on a vinyl record. And then they would also release the sheet music version of it if it was kind of a popular major hit song. Or it would be in a songbook of some kind. So I did used to use that quite a bit, and I think I did learn a lot. It would kind of help me navigate a song or see what chords there were. But I never had much use for tab, and I used to kind of say that. Now, I used to read Guitar Player magazine back in high school, and I seem to remember back then they had columns and things, how to play different songs or different licks, and for jazz or blues or different, or kind of folk. And I seem to remember most of that was written in traditional orchestra score with the treble clef. They might have had some markings or something to indicate. So I never really had much use for tab. But but as I got older, one thing I realized, as I'm sure some of you know, tab's been around for a long time, since the Renaissance. I mean, it's hundreds of years old. And I think tab came out of the days when, like, the lute or early versions of the guitar were some of the main instruments that people sang to, not only in what we might today consider like Baroque or classical music, but just, tavern music and things. And there would be nice pieces people would learn. And tab would help people to play it on the guitar. And tab, would tell you, put your finger here, sixth string, fourth fret. It would tell you. But one thing about tab, it's not really music in the sense that it doesn't have the rhythm, for example. If you didn't know how the song went, I don't think tab would be any help to you. So it was kind of still a culture where people learned by memory and singing the way a lot of us can sing songs we've heard all the time. And then if you wanted to learn to play it, the tab would show you where to put your fingers. But I don't think it would be much use to if someone just said, here's this tab, play it, because you wouldn't have any, at the very least, any rhythm. But tab, I think, did help, and there wasn't a piano much around in those days. There was no piano, and keyboard instruments were definitely kind of a work in progress. So the tab would be kind of useful, I guess, in that sense, because some of that, what we might call classical guitar, but a lot of it was really kind of folk, romantic ballads. Green Sleeves, I guess, would be sort of a stereotypically an example of that. Some of that, would have kind of nice little guitar parts with the melody and accompanying notes, and some of that guitar playing was really pretty nice, and tab would help people learn it. So I do think tab had a role, but I never had all that much use for tab. And I used to say, well, if you can read music, what's tab for? But the thing is about the guitar is different than the piano when it comes to reading music. And sheet music is less helpful for playing the guitar. You know, some of that piano vocal guitar, it'll say, here, play a C chord here. Take me home, country roads, you know, and it'll kind of tell you when to change the chords, and it might have a little diagram of the chord up there. And if you're just starting out especially, that can be really helpful. But it can't really teach you, you know, like how to play nice, you know, fairly specific lead parts or things that are kind of or nice finger picking or something. But the other thing about music that was really based around the piano is the piano has one note. There are 88 notes on the piano, but there's only one of each. So like if you play a C, like take this C, that would be above middle C. There's only one of those on the piano. There are a bunch on the guitar. You can play that. Let's see if I just played 4. Four different places to play the same note. So on the piano, when you see that note, you hit that note. Now on the piano music, you might decide I want to use my left hand, my right hand, my thumb, my pinky, or something. So there's still some elements in that music that might need to be clarified, or you might want to decide to do it your own way. But there's still, you see that note, that's one note. With the guitar, there's so many different positions. So I do think it helps, depending on what kind of music you're learning, to have sort of a blueprint for where to put your fingers, especially when you're starting out, but even you know, for advanced players. I wanted to tell you a little story along those lines. When I was in high school, I thought the guitar was the most important thing in the world. And I think I was about 15, and I went over to this guy's house that played guitar pretty well. And he was about 18. I think I walked about 3 miles to get there, and that was before GPS, and I didn't even really know where I was. But I finally got to his house, and I had my guitar, and he had a guitar, and we sat in his basement. And he started to wax eloquent on the greatness of Led Zeppelin. Of course, I already liked Led Zeppelin, but I was still pretty young. And this was in the heyday of Zeppelin. They were still an active band, so this wasn't, you know, Zeppelin. I mean, Zeppelin was in their prime. And he started to tell me how great they were. Of course, I already knew that, but he knew a lot more about the band than I did. And then he started showing me the Rain song, you know, off Houses of the Holy. And he played it with in standard tuning. And I still remember how he showed me to play it. And he showed me how to play that. He took, you know, quite a while. He was a nice guy, but he took quite a while, and he showed me how he played Rain song with a G chord, then a G seventh, then a G major seventh, and then a G kind of a F chord shaped G on the 3rd fret. And when you got up to this part, he showed me something that, he showed me this kind of spider chord. I can still play it. Sort of. Well, I never really played that song that much, but if someone said, do you know any Zeppelin, or can you play the Rain song, I would be able to play a little bit of it. But I played it that way till I was like 40 years old. I knew it wasn't really right, and there were certain parts of the Rain song you couldn't play that way. Just it didn't seem possible. But he had kind of showed me some of those really famous parts, and so that's what I would always play that. Then one day, I was about 40 years old, so I'm no kid. I was playing guitar with a guy that was about 20. And he didn't know that many songs, you know. He was kind of starting out. He was a really talented young fellow, but he didn't know very many songs. But he picked up that guitar and he messed around up here a little bit, and he started playing the Rain song to a T with those big, lush, you know, all those strings ringing. And and he put it in that weird kind of Celtic tuning that Jimmy Page uses that I didn't know about. And it wasn't like Dadgad. You could look up how to play the Rain Song, but he played it right. And I said, where did you learn to do that? I've never seen anyone play the Rain Song. That was kind of a mystery song, when I was in high school. I mean, I don't know anybody that knew how to play it. And that would be in the mid and late 70s, I mean, nobody knew how to play that song that I knew. And he said he got it off Tab. And I said, wow. So, and he kind of showed me that tuning. And then when I went home, they didn't have YouTube and much video online then, but it was kind of the early days of the internet. And so I did find one of these early guitar sites with some Led Zeppelin tab on it, and I printed it off, that kind of ASCII print, I don't know, but I printed it off. And sure enough, there was the Rain Song with that weird tuning, GCD, GC, I don't know, whatever it is, but it's like a Celtic-y tuning. And it's a pretty weird tuning. And once it told me where to put my fingers. And that was the kind of thing where no matter how good a guitar player you were, if you didn't know that tuning and your way around the neck, you would never, I don't think you'd ever really be able to learn that song. Once you kind of had that specificity of someone saying, this is how you do it. You have to tune it like this, you have to put your fingers here, because the chords aren't standard. Then I found out the Rain Song is actually 10 times easier than the way I'd played it for 25 years, and I still don't play the Rain Song much, only because it's such a weird tuning, and I don't like to mess with tunings too much. But I did learn to play it pretty properly after that, and that was my lesson in Tab. So Tab was kind of cool, and I think it was a neat lesson for me that Tab was helpful. And back in then for a while, Tab became kind of the rage. Speaking of Led Zeppelin, I remember the big, thick, complete Led Zeppelin book with all the Tab in it, and like I said, piano, vocal guitar type music wouldn't help you that much, because I had like Stairway to Heaven in some of those old piano songbooks, but that's not going to help you play it on guitar. But it was kind of the official Jimmy Page approved tab for like every Zeppelin song, and I think I went through, like When the Levee Breaks and some of those, and saw how some of them are pretty unusual, and if you didn't really know what he was doing, you probably wouldn't be able to work it out just by listening to it, because it wasn't in standard tuning, or he was doing some kind of weird things. Jimmy Page, it was very idiomatic. I think some of that came from his background in English folk, which is different. That's different than American folk, and they use some of those kind of misty mountain moors tunings, that give it that kind of mystical feel. I love it. But the thing I also think about Tab is today. So that was 20 years ago when I learned the Rain Song correctly. I think today you could look it up on YouTube in about 2 seconds, and there'd be 50 people that would show you how to play that. Now, some might play it more properly than others, but still, there'd be 50 different people telling you how to play the Rain Song. So I do kind of feel like Tab is going to go the way of piano vocal. How when you walk in a store, you don't see a lot of sheet music like you used to, maybe a little bit, and it's almost kind of a novelty now. So reading music itself, unless you're doing really heavy classical music, there's not much music out there. I'm talking about printed music, maybe choirs and things like that. Fairly specialized things use music. So I sort of think Tab came out of a time when there wasn't really much there was no recorded music and very little musical notation at all, and that would be a way to kind of teach people how to play like some of those beautiful like Latin or Italian songs and things that have kind of specific guitar parts. But with the YouTube now, it makes, I sort of feel like it's obsolete. Like that Led Zeppelin book that was kind of the rage 15 or 20 years ago with all that tab in it. I'm not, and I think the book was $50 or $60. And you should pay for it, but the reality is you can get lessons on all that stuff on YouTube for 2 minutes. Now, I don't know about YouTube lessons. I think a lot of people cut down YouTube lessons, especially if they teach lessons and they're getting paid for it, and then somebody can just go on YouTube and learn all this for free. I kind of get that. And some lessons are probably better than others, but I've sometimes I'll want to see how people play a song, or how do you do the guitar solo in Hotel California or Sweet Home Alabama. There's pretty good lessons. That's pretty advanced lessons too, and I don't even know if tab would help you all that much, and you could just see somebody that just walks you right through it nice and slow. And some of those really specific solos, I'm not much for note in a lot of cases, but some of those really well-defined solos, and so I don't know if you really need tab anymore, but I kind of grew up thinking like Steve Lukather. But I did sort of, for a while there, come to see that tab had a role, and I even used it a little bit on some Zeppelin tunes. But today, I bought a Zeppelin book that's got chords in it. It's like really bare bones, and I almost think that's better. But you got to know the song. If you know the song and you can hear it, then you see that bare bone chord and you can kind of play it. It's not going to tell you much, but in some ways that might be more helpful. But anyway, I kind of wanted to share those thoughts on tab. I respect Steve Lukather a lot, and he's a great guitar player, obviously, needless to say. And I kind of get what he's saying, and I think reading music is helpful. But guitar is a very idiomatic instrument, and like being able to read read through the Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven on the piano, that's not necessarily going to help. Having guitar music for all that, it's not necessarily going to help you because the guitar is so idiomatic. You might be able to see the notes, and if you were pretty good at it, you could kind of figure out your way to play that on a guitar, sort of translate the piano music to the guitar. But it is kind of almost like translation, more than So I've taken little Bach minuets and things out of piano books and kind of transferred them over to guitar. But like I said, it's almost like translation more than just actual music, because you got to figure out, well, that's a D, but where do I want to play that to play it on a guitar with this other thing going on? So that's my take on tab. I sort of think it had a role. I know a lot of great guitar players have used tab to learn pretty advanced stuff. I think if you're playing Old MacDonald or something, I don't know how much it would help you. But I mean, if you're really trying to learn some of those really developed parts, and you want to play them spot on, then tab might have had a role. But I still think with the internet now, who knows? I feel like tab's becoming obsolete, and maybe music itself, maybe the guitar is even becoming obsolete. Sometimes I think that really. But that's my experience, and the Rain song to me was always instructive because that was the one time I used tab, and I've been playing for years. I considered myself a pretty I don't want to say advanced, but yeah, maybe advanced. I've considered myself an advanced guitarist, so I couldn't play the Rain song. And I got that tab, and I sat down with it, and before long, I was playing the Rain song, and I'd been wanting to play that song correctly since I was a kid. So tab has its role. Thank you. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. We're going into that time of year. I hope you consider subscribing to this channel. I've got 201 subscribers, and I don't know. Be nice to get a few more. You take care. God bless you.